Welcome back. The time is 12 minutes before the top of the hour, and you're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, yesterday we witnessed an unprecedented crisis, or a perceived crisis, in South Africa's democratic history: the postponement of the national budget speech. This delay, not just an administrative hiccup, it looks, but it almost signals deep instability within the government of national unity, and raises urgent questions about governance, leadership, and also economic direction that the country should be taking. And this is something that I think deep down all of us knew. And for the first time, party politics look like have directly disrupted the nation's most crucial financial planning process, and sending shockwaves through markets, investors, and ordinary citizens like you and I. But what does this mean for the credibility of the GNU? Is this a sign of deeper dysfunction within this coalition government? And most importantly, what impact will this have on South Africa's already fragile economy? And joining me to unpack these pressing issues is Lukhona Mnguni, a governance, politics, and development specialist. Lukhona, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving us your time here on Salam Media. And I was just going through Twitter, and it looked like you called it. You called it that the government of national unity's biggest challenge will definitely be the finance budget of this financial year. How did you react when you first realized that well, we're not going to have a budget speech? It's cancelled. It's going to be
No,
on
good.
another day.
Yeah, no. Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. I do still think that it's pretty ridiculous, to be quite honest, that the budget was not tabled yesterday, because there are numerous mechanisms available to the government of national unity and to Parliament in terms of debates and discussions. And then of course the voting that has to take place. Well, some might say the minister would have been reluctant to table a budget that was not going to be supported by the DA, but effectively the same discussions and debates that are going to take place now and until the 12th of March could have been offered to take place within the House of Parliament. But I mean, in a coalition arrangement, there's always red lines, and I think the DA had lost a number of their own red lines from a legislative point of view, which is the NHI Act, Bella, and of course the Expropriation Act, which they're now taking to court. So this was probably almost an attempt also on their part to have one up on the ANC to say, look, you are not governing alone, you are not the majority party anymore, and let's just show you how things work in the real world of coalitions.
This is quite, an unprecedented moment, as I mentioned. But from an ordinary South African's point of view, how should we interpret this? What does this mean for South Africa? We are in, a point in our history where we're a multi-party government. Is this something that's going to be happening more often than not? Is this a reality that we should be getting used to? The fact that budgets are not going to be passed, bills are going to be contested heavily, and that there's going to be so much that we're not used to when the ANC was the majority party.
Well, I think for the ordinary citizen, it's ready to realize that times have changed. We are under a coalition government, and therefore political parties will have to debate, discuss, trade off much more than they previously had to do. The other part, I think, which is important for ordinary citizens, is to accept that the normal course of events might not always unfold in the same and similar manner that it is always done over time. The last part, I think, for us ordinary citizens, is also just to accept that when politics become highly competitive, the stakes become high, and therefore we need to accept that some things will happen quicker and some things will take a bit longer to unfold. But I think at a political level, though, one of the things we need to pressure for, which the parties to the government of national unity have clearly been somewhat evasive on, is to actually come up with a coalition agreement, and accept that they're in coalition and that they need a coalition agreement to govern their affairs, and that will probably be the best mechanism, because effectively this whole thing should and could have been avoided if the clearinghouse was doing its work politically and doing it properly. But it's quite clear that it's not doing its work properly, and it's quite clear that there is a miscommunication between either a treasury and cabinet, or between the Minister of Finance and the rest of cabinet. Things need to be sorted out and finalized at some point of government, and taking forward the agenda of government in terms of where things are.
Some opposition parties are calling this a national crisis. One Julius Malema saying we don't even have a government or a cabinet; it has collapsed. Would you agree on this notion? And what should the public and civil society be demanding from the government right now?
Well, I mean, the government is still there. I mean, things don't collapse because politicians say they've collapsed. But I think what we as the public and civil society should be demanding is that Parliament is centered as a democratic institution, or as an institution of democracy, and that matters tabled to Parliament must then be allowed to be debated in Parliament. I don't understand why. Because it's quite clear, I mean, the members of the government of national unity are going to double dip. They will want to create a situation where they are influential in cabinet, but also they would want to have a situation where they are robust in their debates in parliament. So that the budget, in my view, should have been tabled yesterday and then debated parliament, and all other negotiations that need to happen within the realm of parliament, because nothing that by the Minister of Finance through the budget, various divisions of revenue bills, is fait accompli. It can be debated, and something can be removed, and so on. So I think the whole thing is creating an eruption of political standoff that could have been avoided.
And at the heart of this political standoff is that proposed potential VAT increase from 15 to 17%. What do you make of this? Apparently this was proposed by the Minister of Finance and his team, and the DA is the one that condemned it and ultimately led us to the stalemate that we find ourselves in. What do you make of that proposal? And are there any other alternative revenue strategies that could be implemented instead of raising VAT, which we know at this point South Africans are struggling and would further deepen the economic crisis that we're currently facing at this current moment?
No, there's no doubt in my mind the cost of living crisis in South Africa, and an increase in VAT will completely harm the citizens and their ability to afford household expenditure and so on. And of course, it further erodes the value of the rand and all of that. What are the mechanisms available to government? It's making tough choices. You don't need to afford everything at the same time. Do you need to increase defense budget at this point in time? Do you need to secure as much of the grant increases that you want to do? I mean, if you look at the draft speech of the minister, I think they wanted to go as high as 50 rands higher on the child support grant? Does it have to be that? Can you cut down and so on? So it's gonna have to be trade-offs in the budget itself, which is what we normally call an adjustment of the budget. And then, of course, it's got to be discipline and frugality over things such as procurement and so on. And you can put those discipline measures and make savings in how the state procures services, goods, and all of that. And then, lastly, it's got to have the commitment to doing away with corruption. Corruption is a serious sore point in our fiscus, and as long as the politicians don't make a commitment to stop being corrupt, there is no justifiable ground for the taxpayer to be further taxed, and then that money goes into a black hole of corruption.
No, definitely. I think we're going to leave it there, Lukhona. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Really appreciate it.
Only a pleasure.
Lukhona Mnguni, governance, politics, and development specialist, and he was unpacking South Africa's budget stalemate and the uncertainty that this government of national unity has brought to us. You can engage with us. You can give us your thoughts. What do you make of this unprecedented moment that we find ourselves in? Never before in South Africa's history have we had a cancelled or delayed budget speech. Are you nervous? Are you scared? Or are you confident that the government of national unity is figuring itself out? This is democracy at play. This is democracy at its best, where not one political party can decide, the trajectory and direction that the country is taking without it being questioned. You can engage with us. Our studio line is 0116800355. On WhatsApp, you can send us a message or voice note on 0617660355. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be speaking to Investment Associate at 27 for Investment Managers, Fungai Membere. And we're sticking with this conversation around the delayed budget speech. And we'll be looking at it from a market's point of view and what it reveals. I think we saw the rand, huffing and puffing against the US dollar, and it looks like international investor sentiment is not looking that great. But Fungai Membere, Investment Associate 27 for Investment Managers, will give us more after that.